We're back.
Hello, this is George.
Bonnie. And it's Tuesday.
The Tiny Road to Yeshua, April 19th.
Already. Wow.
April 19th.
Amazing how fast the time is going.
I told you that the topic is ignore. But we're going to start out by a little something I wrote, what was it, yesterday?
Yesterday or the day before.
So we got to read that first.
Me.
Some people won't like it.
Oh, well.
But that has never stopped me before.
That would be the first.
Okay. Ready to get started?
Go for it.
I need another one.
All righty, dear.
I like those.
Me too.
We just had Good Friday and Easter. 2 days that passed by in the life of our world. Interesting. Some try to remember what Good Friday was for. Some didn't have to work on that day, so therefore it was a Good Friday for them. This year it was also tax day. Well, for the ones who pay or file their taxes anyway, they called it Good Friday. The day that Yeshua died. We say that was a good day, celebrating his death. Right? I didn't think I was wrong on that. George gave me a little goofy look. Then 3 days later, we celebrate Easter. Yeshua rose from the grave. And then must have come those thousands and thousands of Easter eggs dropping from the sky, from helicopters and stuff, when he walked out of that tomb.
Yeah, I'm sure.
What do you mean that didn't happen?
Oh, George.
That's the way some of those mega churches portray Easter, isn't it? Eggs falling from the sky to prove how far those useless traditions have altered Yeshua's death, burial, and resurrection. Think about it.
Hey, Rich. Hey, Sandy.
We do and did that to his death, burial, and resurrection remembrance. Well, why not? Why not celebrate Yeshua's birth with a fat old man in a red suit then? To me, now this is my words, that is as idiotic as dropping Easter eggs. I know instead of celebrating Yeshua, we'll make that time of year for shopping and even using a date we know he wasn't born on. And then we'll get a large number of the world worshiping a fake name, a fake made-up name, with really no definitive meaning whatsoever. But hey, if everybody feels good about any fake name, well, that's all that really counts, right? The heck with truth. Really? The heck with the truth. They must like that huge, easy road they're on, and when that road leads to that large gate, do you or who will care that you never told your loved ones about truth? And what the scriptures explains what will be a very, very ugly eternity. Your eternity. For most people. That's what the scriptures say. Celebrating Good Friday, Easter, and Christmas any way you want. Go ahead. We don't care. That's your business. It's your business. your time to live, your time on earth, your time to die. Then it's your eternity, not mine. The topic tonight is ignore. So let's see how, who, and what we ignore most of the time. Because we don't study. Either by our learning, our teaching, or maybe our laziness in life. Doesn't sound like all that happy of a subject, does it? Well, that was just the pre-show.
Yeah, just wait.
Now we'll get on to ignore. People, do we ignore the signs? Have we always ignored the signs? Do we look at the scriptures and remember what we've been taught since children and ignore the sign?
Or what it says.
Do we need that comedian saying, here's your sign? Well, we're going to, and I said, let's go over some of those signs. In Hebrew, Breshit, that's Hebrew, for in the beginning. In English, they call it Genesis. Well, there are some signs that we have ignored our whole life. For me, I've ignored them because I was never taught truth. Let's start in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. And some of these we've already went over in future or past talking.
So God created humankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them.
Did she just read God created humankind? Let's not ignore what the Hebrew says. God created the man in his image. He created them, male and female. He created them.
Hey, Lynette.
And then he states later, he called them man. We went over that a couple weeks ago. How ignorant I was to the true word. I don't know about you, but that was something I have never heard from the pulpit. 129, please.
Then God said, Here, throughout the whole earth, I am giving you as food every seed-bearing plant and every tree with seed-bearing fruit.
Like we stated in the past, I was ignorant to the truth that there was no, what my sweetie just read, I'm going to have her read it again, no forbidden tree in Breshit, or Genesis chapter 1. Read 129 again. Move that over so you can see it and hear you better.
Then God said, Here, throughout the whole earth, I am giving you food, every seed-bearing plant and every tree with seed-bearing fruit.
No forbidden tree. Now, do you believe Adonai was going, you know that George Nelson is going to be so stupid that we need to write that beginning part a second time. And when people read it, put it down and call it chapter 2. For over 50 years, I was ignorant to the fact that of chapter 2, verse 8.
Okay, where to go? There it is. Adonai, God, planted a garden toward the east in Eden, and there he put the person whom he had formed.
preachers have excuses for this, but listen to what she read was towards the east in Eden. At times, I get agitated when Adonai shows me how ignorant I have been my whole life. This was and is one of those times. If the garden was towards the east in Eden, then Eden must have come into existence with the society of what is wrote about in chapter 1. I'm going to talk a little more about it. That must have been where Eden was. That shows me how ignorant I have been to the truth and believed, observed, and followed the brainwashing of religion. Not biblical, not even close. Plain and simple. If the man was put in the garden that Adonai made, and it was east of a place called Eden, then Eden we would surmise, must have already been there. God wouldn't put you in a garden east of your hometown unless you and your hometown already existed. Even if your hometown is called Potosi, Zephyr Hills, Moline, Mount Sterling, or Eden. We truthfully don't believe God had Moses write Bereshit or Genesis and then telling Moses about the first part. We'll call that writing chapter 1. But Moses, you better write that first part again. Only this time get it right. Moses, you already wrote that first part, that first one. And it's okay, just leave that first part alone. We'll call that chapter 1 and chapter 2. They'll understand. They'll figure it out. Have we or do they ignore chapter 1 in your church most of the time and boast about chapter 2 as their belief? Their truth, their brainwashing, of course. The religious world ignore the part that doesn't fit their religious agenda. They always have. Before we started really doing our own studying, I was ignorant to the real truth about Noah and the flood. Taught as a young kid. Big flood, guy made a big boat, bunch of animals and stuff in there. We were even ignorant to the real size of the ark until we went to Kentucky and went through the ark on Interstate 75 north of Lexington and south of Cincinnati. After talking Noah, it's hard to think about the ages of the people from Adam to Noah. They are really interesting. Who died, when he died, and who didn't. The book, Study, Your Eternity Depends on It, on page 286, that has our chart of those people. We were ignorant to the fact that Methuselah, the man who lived the longest, died the same year of the flood. It doesn't say if he died in the flood, it just said what year he died. Never realized that before. I was ignorant to that. Heard this comment the other day. Already have it on paper. Some preachers have stated that the calendars were different back in those days, so they weren't really that old. Well, if you want to believe them, or believe the scripture with that writing about their ages, Adonai had Moses write down Believe whatever you want. You tell Adonai that the information he gave Moses for him to write down in one of the oldest books in the Bible about his history of his world is wrong. We won't make some excuse. We won't make some excuse up trying to explain what Adonai meant when it's so plain and simple. And we were ignorant to the fact that that's what was in there. Genesis or Bereshit is full of information. And most of it isn't taught from the pulpit. Genesis 41:46. Please, my sweetie. You're supposed to smile at that. Okay.
41.
46.
46. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Then he left Pharaoh's presence and traveled through all the land of Egypt.
When I read that, I did a little other searching, and I wrote, did you realize that Joseph was sold by his brothers into slavery at or around age 17 and spent 13 years a slave? That meant he was very young to go from sheep herder, slave, jail, to the second in command at age 30. That's what my sweetie just read. He was born in 1915 BC. And he started his ruling in 1885 BC at age 30 years old. Now, to me, that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in the scriptures. But I was ignorant to that fact. There was 279 years between Joseph dying and Moses' birth. Exodus 7:6-7. I hope I'm having you read it at the right time.
Moses and Aaron did exactly what Adonai ordered them to do. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh.
From Moses' birth to when Israel left Egypt was 80 years. Not the total amount of years they were enslaved, but when Moses was born, for 80 years, then 80 years old, Moses led the people out of Egypt. Moses was 80 years old when he led them out of slavery. Now, I can look around and see a lot of 80-year-olds, and I'm 7 or 8 years from there, and I don't know if I'd be walking all that amount of time. He must have been in pretty good shape. Think about it. 80 years old. Okay.
And the herd he led.
Another thing that I was ignorant about. Judges ruled Israel for 325 years before their first king, whose name was Saul. But what did Israel ask Samuel to do for them because of their asking for a king? 1 Samuel 12:19.
All the people said to Samuel, "Pray to Adonai your God for your servants, so that we won't die, because to all our other sins now we've added this evil one as well, asking for a king over us."
They asked for a prayer because they knew they asked for a king and they knew it wasn't right. But it was too late. They already had a king. And you don't think King Saul was going to give up his throne because they wanted to. But they realized that was wrong. Well, not in the best interest at that time. Here is an interesting one. Acts 9, 1 and 2.
Whoops. Meanwhile, Paul, still breathing murderous threats against the Lord's Talmud, or disciples, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogue in Damascus, authorizing him to arrest any people he might find, whether men or women, who belonged to the way, and bring them back to Jerusalem.
He was to go to the synagogues. He was to go to the synagogue and arrest anybody who belonged to the way. We've all heard that before. That was logical. That's what we've heard since we were a little kid. But I found something out. Paul traveled to Damascus, to the synagogue in Damascus. How many of us really realize that wasn't like going 2 miles down the road to the next town? It's approximately 150 miles from Jerusalem to Damascus. And he had to travel across 3 or 4 areas that belong to other sects of the Israelites. He had to cross over them. And he went to the high priest and got a letter to go arrest them who were followers of the way 150 miles away. You might say, like, going all the way across Illinois, that's 200 miles. But across Indiana, that's like 190 miles. Traveling that whole distance just to go see or find people in Damascus that was Messianic Jews.
Well, and then bring them back.
And then bring them back.
And then walk the path back.
And it wasn't like it was a 4-lane interstate going from Jerusalem to Damascus. It was hard roads, rocky,
not much level
mountainy
ground over there if you've been there. Yes, not much level ground.
And I'm going to tell you something else. I didn't write this down, but my sweetie's going to find it in there. Remember when Joseph was, after he got done talking, and they were going to stone Joseph?
No, they were going to stone
Stephen. Excuse me. It says, a young man by the name of Paul stood by their coats. But in another section, another spot, it says that he gave approval. You talk for a minute, honey. I got to find that.
Well, you found it
It says here, 8 verse 1, it says, and
Acts.
Saul, or
Acts
8 verse 1, and Saul gave his approval to murder. Let me ask you a question. When you think about somebody giving his approval and voting to have the execution, when they were going to do, where they were talking about doing that in the Sanhedrin, I believe Saul was part of the Sanhedrin that voted to do it. Because it says he gave his approval to murder Stephen, or whatever, how you want to pronounce it. Nobody's ever said that to me before. See,
all they ever talked about was him holding the coats.
Yeah, him holding the coats. Mm-hmm. But 8:1 says he gave his approval to murder Stephen.
To his murder. That's what it says.
Therefore, and remember, later on, when they had Paul before the Roman, he said, I'm a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. He was taught by Gamaliel, or Gamaliel, whatever you pronounce it. So he was in there putting his vote. You ever see that before? Now I gotta find out where it was. Oh, that's the last part that my sweetie has to read. You can take a break.
Okay.
Now this just comes from the heart. You might not like my heart. Those were just a few events that I was ignorant of. See, I was thinking about me when I was reading all that stuff because I was ignorant to every one of those. Until Adonai told me to study, don't just read. If I or we want truth. Would you turn the air down a couple notches? Let's face it. If you don't study, let me put that a different way. Let's face it. If you don't study yourself, well, then you are being brainwashed by a preacher, priest, rabbi, teacher, here's a good one, or us. If you never do your own studying with what we point out and tell you, then you are being brainwashed by us. And that is the one reason why we always try to stress, never believe us. No, you must do that one little word yourself, study. Why would you believe me? Look at me. Now, this next tape, here's what I wrote. Here is a kind of a harsh statement to you people. You ready? Don't you be so ignorant that you only believe without doing your own eternity work for yourself. I'm going to read that again. Most people won't like that. Don't you be so ignorant that you only believe without doing your own eternity work for yourself. And that goes for right about when your preacher says it, your priest says it, your rabbi teacher says it, or us. Don't be so ignorant that you only believe because you hear it from somebody else without doing your own eternity work yourself. I like that. Religions do not really want you to study too much. No, they want you to fall in line with their religion. Have faith in their church, their denomination, and their religion. You want me to read that again?
Yeah. I think that's a good one.
Religions do not really want you to study too much. No, they want you to fall in line with their religion. Have faith in their church, their denomination, and their religion. Once your faith is in them, it's really not in the Messiah, whose name is Yeshua, or Yeshua. If any of you have ever gone to your preacher, priest, or rabbi teacher and asked them, is Yeshua the Messiah's real name? What did they say? How about if you asked them, what was the Jewish Messiah's real name? Make him tell you, or her tell you. They may say, well, his Hebrew name was Yeshua, or Yeshua. But he's known by a lot of names. We're going to hit that one in a few weeks. It really doesn't matter what name you use. No, it's what you have in your heart that counts. Maybe they said, we call our Messiah by another name because or the Father knows what we mean. Now this next part is from us. I'm going to read that again. It really doesn't matter what name we use. That's what if your preacher says, the man you go to says, it really doesn't matter what name you use. No, it's what's in your heart that counts. Maybe they said we call our Messiah by another name because, or the Father knows what we mean. Well then, the next part is from us. That is hitting being ignorant to the max. If you are ever out to eat with your preacher, ask to pray for the food and do exactly what they say. And do what they have instructed you. See, it really doesn't matter to him or her if you end it in the name of Scooby-Dooby-Doo. See what they say, because according to them, it doesn't matter, right? We don't know about you, but that last part should be showing everybody that that's the preacher, the priest, or the rabbi teacher, they ignore the truth of Yeshua for a falsehood called religion, not faith. We feel sad about the billions who are led to the false belief because they chose to ignore truth. We, us three that's sitting right here, can do nothing to change people who have been led to that huge door. Really, we can't. We can talk to people all we want, but it's your decision, your belief.
Your choice.
Oh, there are individuals saying right now, yes, you can, or yes, we can. We can pray. People, if they or you will not accept truth, the truth from the Word of God, you will never see truth because of the damage already done to you through your own brainwashing of what you call religion. Religion. And it doesn't matter what church or denomination you call yourself. In the end, you have a religion, not faith. Faith comes from God. Religion came from man. Now, if you just said, or even thought, I have faith that our religion has it right, then do what we just said. And see if your religion does ignore the Son's real name. And if they convince you they have the right to call Yeshua any name they so please, and it's all right with their God, well then, who is their real God? So you have a choice. To ignore Yeshua, that's why I called it
Good
that.
topic.
To ignore Yeshua, or ignore the total brainwashing of your society. Let me read that again. So you have the choice to ignore Yeshua or ignore the total brainwashing of your society. That doesn't mean just you or your church or your family. That's a society. We choose to follow, not ignore Yeshua. But like always, it's up to you, and we don't blame you if you choose to ignore him. See, your brainwashing has you right where they want and need you. Yes, they do. It doesn't matter if you ignore Yeshua. Just a little. Maybe I said that wrong. It doesn't matter if you ignore Yeshua just a little or all the way. See, either way, when you ignore him, you're on that huge road. Okay, now there's certain people that are probably going, why not be happy for these short years we have here on earth? Hey, we have an idea, right?
Yeah.
Live like hell now. That way you will be prepared for it later. George gave me a little goofy look.
You gotta write that one again.
Why not be happy for these 4 short years you have now? Hey, we have an idea. Live like hell now. That way you will be prepared for it later. Right? That is exactly your final place of worship. When you ignore Yeshua now, in hell you will and are worshiping, and yes, you already do it. You deserve it. It's your responsibility, not mine.
Okay.
You are worshiping Satan when you ignore Yeshua. I like that one. You are worshiping Satan when you ignore Yeshua. He had a name. We may at times feel defeated because of so very few who follow the Son now. Yet after our last breath, we will one day walk with other true believers in Yeshua through that little gate. There are so few, so very few, who truly believe. Do you ignore Yeshua for happiness in Satan's brainwashing and his world? Don't follow us. Don't believe because of us. Do your own true study yourself. We never ignore Yeshua. Do you?
Tom made a statement right before you read that paragraph a couple paragraphs ago. I thought he must be reading our notes again. He said, so it's essentially ignore Yeshua or ignore the adversary is what it comes down to. He wrote that just before you read that about the adversary. He's reading your notes again.
It's true, Tom.
He's reading your
exactly
notes.
What I said. I use Satan instead of the adversary, but the adversary is...
It's like, I read that and I thought...
See, this
Wow.
ignore stuff never went anywhere where anybody thought it was. When I first sat down and wrote the word ignore, I had no idea where it was going. But think about it. Think of all the things you, your family, and your church, if you go to church, and your society ignore the truth of the word. Not my word. What the scriptures say.
And it's so obvious when you bring it like you did tonight.
It is so obvious, and really it is so simple, because if it wasn't simple, I'd never catch it.
That's just it. It's actually really simple.
She just agreed with me.
I usually do.
She just said that's it. If it wasn't simple, I wouldn't catch it.
I finished the sentence.
Oh. I think she was agreeing with me. Anyway.
Wow.
ignore?
I still like that one sentence.
Which one? This one?
No, the one above it.
Why not be happy
Yeah.
for the short years you have here on earth? Hey, we have an idea. Live like hell now, that way you'll be prepared for it later. And there's a lot of people preparing for it. And most, and
I
a
like
lot
that.
of them,
We've got to have a bumper sticker that says that.
and I hate to say this, but there's a lot of them that go to this little building called church or
We need to
synagogue.
get Daryl involved.
In the last statement, we never ignore Yeshua. Do you?
And
Tom asked the question.
No, Tom says, it's simple. If you follow like sheep instead of study for truth. That's pretty good. It popped up this time again. That's really how
That's
that
weird.
happens. Yeah, because that's the only one that popped
Never.
up. It's simple. If you
Follow
follow
like
like
sheep.
sheep instead of study for truth.
Well, the people,
So if you follow
the
like
problem
sheep,
is
you're
they
out of
follow
luck.
like sheep to what denominational philosophies are and church doctrine instead of biblical words
what
and
could be
biblical
their-
scripture. And it's got to be simple. Like my wife just said, if it wasn't simple, I wouldn't get it.
Now, that's really weird. That's the second time he's
But-
done that. Wow.
That's it for ignore. I just proved to you how ignorant I am. I've been ignoring truth for all 72 years.
Well, not all
Okay, 71 and a half.
of it.
We have fun studying. We have fun doing this. No, we aren't all that popular, but
Who cares? And Tom says, and cows follow the others to the slaughterhouse.
some of them need that prod, though. But
Wow, I like these
I'm
analogies
glad you were
coming
on.
up.
I'm glad you're on. I'm glad you tuned in. I'm glad you watch it later. And if you don't, you lost out. It doesn't make any difference to me.
Yeah, Tom says, doesn't mean it's good for their health. Well, that is true.
That's
Or
true.
their eternity.
Well, they make it to the meat market faster that way. Okay.
You got a topic for next week yet, dear?
Next week, I have about 3 things I already wrote down. But when I picked up my short notes, I have short writings and notes for next week. It could be about anything. I got 4
Ooh.
pieces of paper already, and not a one of them go with the other one. And don't know what it's going to be.
So are you going to
Short
give them a
notes.
heads up by next Tuesday? Before next Tuesday?
Yeah, it's going to be short writings and notes. I have no idea what. I'm saving the ones that I have written.
Written.
See, she's
Yeah,
a
for
smart
English.
one.
Writ down there.
I'm
That's
saving those
Kentucky.
when I'm out on the road. We will be out on the road in 2 weeks.
We'll
We
probably
got 2 more of these
we'll have
from
one
the
yeah,
house.
2 more weeks from the house.
They're
And
on
then
the
who
road
knows?
again.
Watch out, Tom.
But-
We may be coming your way.
Next week, short writings and notes. Maybe I'll put down there what the headings are or what some of them point to during the week, but I don't
knows?
really remember what they are right now. I'm not a very good teacher not to remember what I'm going to do next week.
Oh no, you like keeping them in suspense.
I like keeping you in tension.
Make them come
Suspense.
back to find out what's going on.
And that's why we lose so
Tune
many.
in. Hey,
Because they go,
the
I don't like what that old
important-
buzzard
the
just
important
said.
ones show up,
But
and
anyway.
the important ones watch it later, and that's all that counts.
What I always end with on the computer and on here. God bless.
Have an awesome week, guys. See you next Tuesday.